Hey everyone, Scummy Legion here, and I just wanted to go over a certain comment that I had. This is not like a call out, or this is not to put anyone down. This is simply to clarify a statement that I've apparently made too vague or too broad. I take full responsibility for this. I probably should have done a better job in my defense of explaining what I meant, and for those that don't catch my streams, they probably don't know the full extent of some of the things I say or talk about when it comes to Survivor/Killer. But I think this comment is actually very helpful for covering it. And so I'm going to use it as an example. I don't want anyone to call this person out or to, shit talk them. I don't want anyone to assume, especially not the person themselves. I don't want them to think that I'm sitting here calling them out or telling them they're wrong or not. They are right in some aspects of their content, or not content, but their comment. But um, I feel like they went about it a certain way, or maybe there's certain things they don't understand fully. And if they choose to stand by their statement or assume that I'm wrong in my statement, so be it. I figured this is just for clarification purposes and nothing more. That's all. So let's start with this from the beginning. So DS is fine. That was put on a video of my D strike. I put sure with 3 dots because, yeah, I know I'm just agreeing with Aaron. So, why is DS still a thing? It has as much used as Old Ruin, but behavior seems to be okay with it, which is true. And so I put out the statement, which is very broad. Again, in my opinion, I should have done better explaining this. Behavior doesn't care if survivors are OP. To an extent, yes. But that doesn't mean that they didn't make balance changes around Survivor, but they made a lot more as far as Killer. And Gustavo here wants to point out some of those issues that were stronger that got nerfed on the Survivor side. And that's fair enough. So let me go over those. First of all, he says, so they didn't nerf Metal Man. Yes, they did. They did. I get he's trying to say, like Metal Man was OP, so survivors got nerfed in that aspect. Survivors were not OP. The perk was. And this is a perk that was too easy to proc, that didn't require any thinking. It required, I'm going to run around and I'm going to get M1'd 3 times, and then the next time I'm going to take 3 hits. I'm still not going to go down. I'm going to need a 4th hit. And when you have a game of 4 survivors doing that, and some are great loopers, or some are really shit loopers, it makes them stronger. And that's not okay. That's not how the survivors should be. The survivors should be given perks that give them a chance to get away if used properly, or give them a chance to extend chases. But that should be because they use them well. This, they didn't have to do anything but get hit. Behavior talks about how Old Ruin didn't do anything, it was just kind of passive. You just ran the perk and there you go. At least it was a hex perk that could be dealt with in the first 20 seconds. Metal of Man could not. Metal of Man was just there, and M1 killers just had to deal with it. Unless you're playing Huntress or Nurse, whose blink attack did not proc it for a while, or you played Billy or Bubba or anybody that didn't proc it with basic attacks, you were screwed. You were genuinely screwed. M1 killers suffered. Even Myers suffered to a point. Now Myers would need tier 3 to deal with them, but he can only keep up tier 3 for so long, unless he runs infinite. And if he runs infinite, even then, along the path he could get gen rushed. So that's what I'm going to put there about that. Next up is, nor did they nerf self-care about 3 times. Okay, self-care, running, that's another one where running a perk that gives you 100% healing without needing a medkit, if you're going to do something like that, you take medkits out of the game. There are medkits still in the game. You can still do that. It is an add-on, and you find it a lot easier in the Blood Web than you do self-care. And those medkits can be given more charges, so they last just about the whole game, as long as you are optimal on gens, and you are not getting, like, ran down immediately, or dealing with insta-downs. But just because they took a perk from 100% healing and reduced it to 50%, but you reduced the consume rate of medkits by 20%, does not mean that it was so terribly nerfed or that they don't want survivors being OP. They can still heal without a medkit, and medkits can still be used to be very strong. The balanced landing. That is not a nerf. It needs to be understood that what they did and what Behavior themselves said on their podcast and even on the balance notes when it was announced, it was not working as intended. It was never meant to create infinites, and it was never meant to keep the stagger even when exhausted. All they did was change it back to the old ways, and when they switched over to the new way, they didn't think about the loops on Haddonfield or on Ironworks of Misery. They did not take those into account, and after they noticed that, hey, this perk alone creates infinites that killers literally can't deal with unless they're trappers or hags or maybe even like a legion that has like Frank's mixtape, the old one specifically, not the new one. I mean, the new one maybe, but still. That's not how a perk is intended. It shouldn't create infinites to where a survivor is basically 100% safe versus a good majority of the killers. And like they said, the perk was changed to how it was intended to work, not nerfed. There is a difference between a nerf and a change. Now, getting off of that, we have the exhaustion mechanics. If someone sprint burst, ran me for 40 seconds, and then sprint bursted away again, I don't think whether you're on the killer side or the survivor side, that helps anyone. Survivors don't have to think anymore. They just have to go to the nearest god loop and run it for a while until, like you could do Ironworks of Misery again, because that loop takes so long to even catch up, even without balance landing, that you get it back up and then you could just sprint burst away. And Larry's would be 10 times annoying with live, because live you could just keep vaulting and just running and going and going and going. Dead hard, you use it to dodge one time, throw down a pallet and get to the next loop, or keep them running a little bit more, and then the next time they go to swing, boom, dead hard. Balance landing, again, balance landing. Exhaustion mechanic was implemented in the game in the early stages, much like self-care was nerfed in the earlier stages. This is because at the time, killers were also OP. Survivors were OP. They had to balance everything. You cannot take something from the old times of DBD during the Dark Ages, when survivors were broken, killers were broken, certain killers were literally unplayable, and certain survivors literally had the best perks in the game, like Nia did with the balanced landing, and especially Meg with sprint burst and no exhaustion mechanic. You could sprint burst into adrenaline. You can still do that now, but your sprint burst would come off cooldown then after the adrenaline, and you could sprint burst again. If it's timed just right and you sprint bursted and then you adrenaline, and then you get cross map, and by the time the killer catches up and you've got a gate 99, you could potentially sprint burst to the next one, or you could sprint burst around, come back, open it up. How does a killer solve that? How does a killer deal with that? It's implemented for balance purposes. Next up, the entity blocker. If somebody's using a loop 3 times on you, like in Ormond, how some of the pallets into windows, if they were to not block the window, somebody could run that infinitely on you, because by the time you even gain Bloodlust and it looks like you might get the first hit, they could drop that pallet and then force you to break it. Or if you get that first hit, they could just keep running the loop, because then the next time they know, okay, this is how far I need to go before, Bloodlust goes. And then once they start seeing that they're about to get hit, maybe Dead Hard comes out, and maybe Lithe comes out again, whatever, and then they throw the pallet down. Now you lost Bloodlust, and now they're just going to run you to the next loop that's similar to that. Entity Blocker is there to prevent those kind of issues, so killers have a chance, because survivors kind of the power role. Nor did they remove Instablinds or Brand New Part or Old DS. DS right now is still an issue. Old DS was more of an issue because everyone had it, and if you weren't the Obsession, you had to get to 33% on the wiggle bar, which versus like a Sabo team or whatnot is very easy. Or even some maps is just easy because of how you go down. Like you just go to a corner and then boom, you get a free stab after all that chasing. Old Brand New Part was 100% of a gen in like a second or 5, but that doesn't mean it's still not an issue, and that's still not strong. If you have 4 brand new parts, that's either 1 gen completed in 5 seconds, or that is 4 gens at 25% in the first 5 seconds of the game. And Old Brand New Part, that'd be 4 gens finished in the first 2 to 5 seconds, which definitely was more of an issue. But when you say that this is something that they never, or this is their way of solving OP things, you are literally listing down some of the more broken things in the game that cause the game to be near unplayable on certain maps or in certain scenarios. Survivor Friends with Old Brand New Parts, Survivor Friends with Brand New Parts now are very strong and very, very difficult to go up against. You just need 1 person that can run, and you have 3 gens pop. Like, what? That's one that I'm gonna say is not it. Like, it's similar to the exhaustion mechanics, the entity blocker, and the balance landing. Those are not arguments. Those cannot be used as arguments. The insta-blinds you can still do if you have a friend. You just 2 odd bulbs and a purple flashlight, and you insta-blind someone. I believe it's the focus lens, too, or one of the lenses would also help make it faster. But like, this is still relevant. It's just you can't do it by yourself now. These are still relevant. DS right now is still a hot topic, and it's still ran in 80% of games, most likely. Out of all this, I think the only thing that you brought up proper was Medal of Man, and even that was just something that was more or less needed to be solved. But as I said down here, survivors dictate the game. This is supposed to be a killer game where the killer is so strong you need 4 survivors. I feel if you have a full team of top percent or top survivor friends, and you have, or even just survivor friends in general, actually, just put them on comms, and you have 3 people versus 1 killer, I'm fairly certain they can get that shit done, as long as all 3 of them bring brand new parts and abuse, the stuff you say are, removed. Let's bring all of them with brand new parts. They all bring DS. They could bring balance landing or sprint burst, whatever exhaustion perk you really want. And I can guarantee they will still get the job done. If you were to have any of this back in the game, you could put 2 survivors in the game and they get the job done. Now, you list down primarily survivors. You gotta look at all the killers too. There were nurse nerfs, there were spirit nerfs. And spirit, even that one, like, I probably shouldn't even say that because spirit, they didn't intend for the collision to make sense. Nurse, she was strong with her add-ons. These were strong too. Nurse got nerfed. Now you have to play more skillfully to make them happen. This is not more skillful. The brand new part is still very low skill. You just have to hit a couple hard skill checks and that's it. Insta-blinds, somewhat skillful. I'll admit on that one. Balance landing, there was no skill in using that. Exhaustion mechanics, there was no skill with that. Entity block, no skill, just knowledge of loops. Self-care, as long as you got out of the killer's as long as you got out of the chase with the killer, you were healed up. Same with medkits right now. Medal of Man, 0 skill. None of these required skill to abuse. Nurse, you had to be good at nurse to abuse what she did. You want to talk about other nurse? Well, you could look at the original Freddy. You could look at the fact that gen speeds still go insane, and yet Slowdown Freddy got nerfed because the game went too slow. Why? Why is that bad that the game goes too slow? Why did Ruin, which I don't necessarily care about the Ruin one, but Ruin was in 80% of games in red ranks. I think that's a sign that gens are too fast, not that slowdown perks need to be nerfed. Iron Grasp was nerfed from what it used to be. There's plenty of things on the killer side that were nerfed. You listed down primarily survivors. And I understand the topic was, survivors ROP and behavior doesn't care. Behavior made these changes, but did even worse to killers by gutting some of their perks and gutting characters like, well, my main, the Legion. They gutted him to death. I'm not defending Frank's mixtape. Old Frank's mixtape needed to be gutted, but you didn't need to gut the killer as much as he was. And even the rework felt almost half-assed, honestly. So when you want to bring up a topic like this, first of all, anything from season 1 to 2, like this shit, anything, even a little bit of self-care, any of that stuff, that was primarily when they were still learning to balance the game. That was back when Saboteur broke a hook, and Saboteur just broke a hook. Like, it was gone. You didn't bring that up. You didn't bring up Saboteur getting nerfed, and it makes me think you're a Survivor player because of this. Because I doubt if you were a killer player, you would want any of this back in the game. I doubt it. I doubt you would be fine with playing against any of this and say, yeah, this is better. No. Nobody does. And I don't even want old killers back. Old killers were fucking insane. Like, at the time you had all this stuff, like the exhaustion mechanic not implemented, no entity blocker, no balance landing nerf, self-care, all that, and old DS and brand new part, you had like double pallets on certain tiles that you don't see anymore. Survivors are still strong. Survivors were nerfed, yes, but at the end of the day, survivors still dictate your game. I've had games where I get absolutely dominated by like optimal Quentins, for example, like a more recent one, because they play well. But then I have a game in the same rank with same ranked survivors who are not on comms, and I crush them. You know why? It's not because I just got better from that one game. No, it's because the survivors got worse. If survivors all played like the top 2% and I was just crushing that team of Quentins and the team of potato survivors and going on and on and on, then that's my skill level. Because killers are the harder role. They're very hard because we have so much more to manage. They have holding M1 or M2 with their toolboxes and just doing gens. And if you say that they need to know how to loop, yeah, some do. But if you have a good survivor friends, which is another controversial topic for another video, you need one runner. You need one person to get the killer's attention and run them. And as long as they do a 40 to 80 second run, you could have anywhere from 3 to 2 gens pop. There's nothing else to say beyond that. It's just like, I understand my statement was very broad, but when you point out that my statement isn't right either, it is. It is, though. And the reason why is simply because if you look at behavior and what they've done and what they've said, they've outright said stuff like, we give up on the Legion, for example. That was a more recent one. They gave up on him, or they somewhat regret making him. You don't hear them say, well, we regret bringing this perk into the game on Survivor's side. Do you know why? Because they don't. They don't regret DS. They don't regret balance landing. They don't regret adrenaline. They don't regret any of that. They never will. Like, they just don't care as much because they assume survivors want to have this more power and more fun, when in reality they're killing the killers. I don't want to see this game die out, and honestly, if survivors keep being the power role, people are going to switch to survivors, which the saddest thing too is if you were to main survivor, you can make it to rank 1 easier than you can killer. Because if you run into one good killer, all you need to do is run them for a little bit of time and have everybody else do gens. You'll still get out. Or you bring your friend with you that can run, and you don't even gotta run to get to rank 1. You just duo with him all the way through doing gens. Whereas on killer side, you don't bring anyone with you. You are just there, and you have to do it based on your own skill, and you have to figure out, when do I give up chases? When do I not? How do I outplay this loop? Survivors, they just kind of look at a loop and it speaks for itself. Killers, you gotta know which way they're gonna go and what's the right step. Because if you misstep once or twice, killers will punish you, or survivors will punish you very, very hard. So, behavior doesn't care if survivors are OP. The statement means less of just the perks and more of survivors are the power role, and that's not how this game should work. It is an asymmetrical horror game that is a 1v4 aspect. That 1v4 implies that the 1 is stronger than 4. If this game came down and you had the best killers versus the best survivors, and you had it 1v3, and they ran the most overpowered add-ons, the most overpowered items, the most overpowered this, killers could try to run the most overpowered this, that, and the other, and unless they're playing Nurse or Spirit, they're just going to get destroyed. I don't want a game where I have to choose between those two killers if I want to counter extremely good survivors. I want a game where the killer is the power role, not because it's easy, but because you get rewarded for putting in time and effort, and survivors have to put in time and effort to be better. This is not, I just want to point this out one more time, this is not any kind of calling out, this is not me trying to tell you you're wrong with anything you brought up. I'm just trying to explain why these are not debate points for this specific topic. Because it feels like, from what you mentioned, you're only looking at the one side. You're not looking at both sides. And I feel like if I said, behavior doesn't care if killers are OP, I don't know if anyone would say, oh, you're right. Killers are OP. Because they're really not. And the ones that are get nerfed very, very quickly. Slow Down Freddy, after it was found, got nerfed after, 2 patches or so, 2 or 3, I believe. Which seems like a decent amount of time, but it wasn't truly abused like it could have been. And there were people and survivors just DC from the game if it's someone or it's some build that they don't like. People still sometimes DC when they see Spirit. They just don't want to play against it. So, what more do survivors want? Killers are already not the power role, and if survivors are just going to complain about this, that, and the other, yeah, they've had a few nerfs. We took away their infinites. That's not a nerf to survivors. That's just making their role take some actual skill to play. Rather than just, I have balanced landing, I have a bunch of Haddonfield add-ons, I'm going to just hug the infinite the entire game. Because when I was starting out in this game, I had those days. I had those days where I just wanted to play Survivor, and on Xbox, I'm pretty ashamed to say that after I found out about the infinites on Haddonfield, all I looked for was Haddonfield keys, and on Xbox alone, I haven't done it since then, but on Xbox alone, I got to rank 2, and all I did was hug the infinite and let my teams do gens. If I got hit, I'd run to the infinite, and I'd start doing it, and once the killer left me, I just heal up. Did I deserve rank 2? Am I a rank 2 survivor? No. I abused an infinite. And if I didn't have my Haddonfield add-ons, I'd go to the Ironworks. What'd I do there? Well, I'd do the gens around the outside, and I'd run the God Loop that turned into an infinite with balanced. Like, what part of that sounds like, you know what, you deserved rank 2? Or what part of that sounds like I used any bit of brain power to actually get anything done? Or, earn my ranks or my wins? I had killers that hated me. I had killers that messaged me all the time about what a piece of shit I was. And after a while, once I started playing more and once I started understanding the game more, I really was. So when I look at it from this game, I look at it from both sides. I really do. It seems like I, punish survivors more and more and more, and it seems like I talk down on them. It's not because I hate survivors. I really don't. I actually like playing Survivor and having fun nowadays. I run Medal of Man and I just have a good time. But what I get annoyed with is when survivors have this god complex where, they need to be freed, or they feel like they should be given hatch because of this, that, and the other. Or, oh, well, you tunneled me with my DS that lasted an entire minute and I ran to your face in the last 10 seconds of DS. Are they nerfed? Are they really? Because slugging one right down and I see the obsession, if I have no obsession perks, all it says to me is I can't pick anyone up off of hook. If they ran to me or they made a bad play, I have to sit there and I have to make sure that it's been 60 seconds. If they jump in a locker, I have to make sure 60 seconds pass by. And they could end up having, tier 1 DS and it's only 40 seconds, but I don't know that. I don't know. It's always a guessing game. Object of Obsession, they haven't really nerfed that yet. I mean, it's good for, now versus stealth killers because it used to reveal them, but it's still one of those perks where they can abuse the shit out of it. So, survivors, they had a few small nerfs. Killers have too. Don't look at one side, just look at both sides. Again, I apologize for my statement being broad and for this video having to come out, but if I didn't explain it myself, I don't think my point would have ever been across, and I feel like there would have been still some confusion left in the game, and confusion left in what I said and what was discussed here. I don't plan on making these videos for a lot of comments, or I don't plan on making them all the time for literally anyone or anything, but if there's a statement that seems vague, or there's a debate that doesn't get settled outside of the comment section, or doesn't get settled in, say, the Discord, then I'm gonna answer it, but I'm never answering it to put someone down or to tell someone you're dumb because you thought this. No, it's simply clarification. I just want people to understand where I come from and what I mean when I talk about certain things, including this whole survivor, not hate, but this survivor reality is what it is. I'm not the only one with these thoughts, and if you want, to mention anything like this, or you really want to come after my opinion, that's fine. If you come at it with disrespect, I'm not going to answer you. I'll just be honest. If you come at me with some respect like he did, he brought examples and whatnot, the only bit of disrespect is but my statement isn't right either. And I felt like that was more on me. He just needed clarification. That's all. So, there it is, and I hope this helps. Thank you, everyone, for joining me, and thank you so fucking much, everyone, for the support, honestly. Everyone from Gustavo to my first subscribers, honestly, I appreciate the support. I appreciate it all. It helps me so much do what I want to do. Thank you for joining me.